My name's Carolyn Blake, and I'm 67 years old. I've spent almost my entire life here in Cedar Grove, Kentucky. I've been a widow for 12 years now. My husband, Robert, passed suddenly from a heart attack. Ever since then, keeping Christmas alive has been my job. I'm the one who makes sure the house sparkles, the ham goes in the oven, the pies cool on the counter, and the table looks just the way Robert and I used to set it together. If you're listening to this, please like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. For me, Christmas was always about peace, family, and that quiet comfort of being together. At least, that's what I tried to hold on to after he was gone. My daughter Melissa usually drives in from a couple of hours away with her husband and their kids. She always brings a casserole or two and helps me finish setting the table. She's steady, dependable, the kind of daughter you thank God for. But my son, David, and his wife, Kara, have turned the holidays into something I dread. 3 years in a row, they've shown up late, started fights, and left everyone else walking on eggshells. What used to be a day of joy now feels like a storm I have to brace for. The first year it happened, I told myself they were just stressed. But Kara complained about the gifts, right there at the table. She said I hadn't spent as much on their kids as I had on Melissa's. Her voice was sharp, and the grandkids just sat there in silence. David didn't stop her, he even joined in saying, "Mom, it's not fair. You always play favorites." I remember sitting there with tears in my eyes, looking at those presents I'd saved up for on my small Social Security check, wondering how it had come to that. The next year was worse. David and Kara showed up 2 hours late without even calling. The food was cold by then. Melissa tried to warm things up in the oven, but by the time we sat down, everyone was cranky and tired. Then David brought up money. He asked if I could lend them a few $1,000s. I told him I couldn't, that I was on a fixed income. He pushed, and Kara muttered under her breath that I was stingy. David's face turned red, and he shouted that I'd rather spend on Melissa than help him. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the wreath fell off. Christmas ended right there. The third year should have been my wake-up call. But I kept telling myself it was just family tension. That year, Kara started criticizing my cooking before she even sat down. She wrinkled her nose at the ham, said it looked dry, told the kids not to eat too much of the green bean casserole because it was too heavy. She even made fun of my pies. "Oh, store-bought again," she said, and I'd spent hours baking them from scratch. By dessert, she had packed up the kids and left without saying goodbye. I remember standing at the sink that night, staring at a pile of dirty dishes, asking myself why I kept letting it happen. The answer was simple: I love my grandchildren. I couldn't stand the thought of them missing Christmas. I told myself I could handle the fighting if it meant I still got to see their little faces that morning. But last year broke something in me. I'd set the table with my best dishes, the ones Robert and I bought when we first got married. The ham was perfect, the rolls buttered, the pies cooling. Melissa was there early, helping me get everything ready. My neighbor, Evelyn, had stopped by with her famous cranberry salad. For a moment, I thought maybe this year would be calm. Then David and Kara arrived, almost an hour late, and the tension came through the door with them. Their voices were raised before they even reached the table. The grandkids looked embarrassed, eyes on the floor. Melissa shot me that look across the table, the kind that says, "Here we go again." We tried to start dinner anyway. I passed the mashed potatoes, Melissa poured drinks, and I was just setting the pecan pie down when it happened. David slammed his fist on the table so hard the plates rattled. Kara glared at him, snapping that he never helped enough at home. He yelled back that she was ungrateful. Then he turned to me and said, "And you always take her side. You've never been on mine." That sound, his fist hitting the table, the shock on the kids' faces, the way Melissa froze with her fork halfway to her mouth, it's burned in my memory. That's when I knew I couldn't do it anymore. As the plates settled and the pie shook on the table, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to let my holidays be ruined again. Not for a fourth year. I wasn't going to let their fights poison the one tradition that still connected me to my husband, my faith, and the joy I was trying so hard to keep alive. That night, I smiled weakly through dinner, just to get us to the end. But in my heart, I made a decision. This year would be different. I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing for sure: David and Kara weren't going to ruin Christmas anymore. I went to bed with that thought echoing in my mind, stronger than any carol, stronger than any prayer. This year, something had to change. And that was where it all began. The morning after that Christmas blow-up, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The house was quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. It was the heavy kind, the kind that fills the air after too many words have been said. I glanced around at the leftovers still sitting on the counter, the untouched rolls, the pie with just one slice missing, and I thought, why do I keep doing this to myself? Most days, my life is simple. I live on a fixed income, so I've learned to stick to a steady routine. I clip coupons from the paper, make my grocery list, and stretch every dollar till it squeaks. I don't need much. A little cereal, milk, bread, peanut butter, a few vegetables, maybe some chicken if it's on sale. I pay the bills first, electric, water, medicine. Whatever's left has to last until the next check. I stay busy in my own quiet way. Mondays, I do laundry and clean out the fridge. Wednesdays, I drive over to the quilting circle at church. That's one of the few things I still look forward to. We don't just quilt, we talk, laugh, share old stories, and swap recipes. And on Sundays, after service, there's always the church potluck. Those afternoons remind me I'm not alone, that there are other women my age who know what it's like to hold a family together when no one else seems to care. But December is always different. That's when I pull the Christmas boxes down from the closet. I dust off the ornaments Robert and I collected over the years, set out the little nativity he carved by hand, and iron the tablecloth I only use once a year. I do it all with the same hope, that Christmas will somehow bring us back together, that it'll feel like family again. And yet, every single year for the past 3 years, I've ended up disappointed. The first year it fell apart, I told myself it was just stress. Kara made a scene about the gifts. I'd spent weeks shopping for the grandkids, trying to be fair, but she stood right in my living room accusing me of favoring Melissa's children. It's obvious, she said, you spent more on them. David backed her up, saying I'd always had favorites. I wanted to defend myself, but my throat closed up. The kids just sat there, holding their unopened presents. Before I knew it, Kara grabbed her coat, told the kids to put their shoes on, and stormed out. The wrapping paper was still on the floor when they left. The next year was no better. David and Kara were late again, and by the time they showed up, everyone was tense. I tried to make the best of it, reheating food, resetting the table, but halfway through dinner, David asked me in front of everyone if I could lend them money. Thousands of dollars. I shook my head and said softly, "Son, I just don't have it. I'm on a fixed income." He didn't like that answer. His face turned red as he said I'd rather spend on Melissa than help him. He shoved his chair back so hard it scraped the floor and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Melissa's kids started crying, and that was the end of dinner. The third year, I thought maybe things would be better. I baked pies from scratch, spent days cleaning, tried to make everything perfect, but the moment Kara walked in, she started criticizing. The ham was too dry, the green bean casserole was too heavy, even the pies got a comment. "Oh, store-bought again," she laughed. My hands actually shook when I told her I'd baked them myself. By dessert, she had packed up the kids and left. The sound of that door closing behind her still echoes in my head. Every year after they left, I cleaned up alone, the dirty dishes, the spilled drinks, the empty chairs. I'd stand there wondering why I kept hosting when it only brought me pain. I told myself it was for the grandchildren, that I wanted them to have good memories with their grandmother. I thought maybe if I just kept trying, things would change. But last year, I finally saw the truth. No matter how much love I poured into that day, David and Kara would always find a way to tear it down. The shouting, the slammed doors, the insults, they had become part of my Christmas. And the hardest part was realizing I had allowed it. I'd opened the door, set the table, made space for their chaos, year after year. That morning, sitting there with my cold coffee and the leftovers no one wanted, I finally admitted the truth. Christmas wasn't bringing me joy anymore. It was breaking me. What used to be my favorite day of the year had turned into the one I dreaded most. And yet, deep down, I knew something had to change. I thought about Melissa, how she never complained, always showed up, always helped, always held her tongue when the others lost theirs. She deserved better. My grandkids deserved laughter, not tension. And I deserved peace. But how do you undo a tradition that's lasted for decades? How do you tell your own child that you can't keep hosting because their behavior has poisoned the day? Those questions followed me everywhere, as I folded laundry, cooked simple meals, and sat through church services in the weeks that followed. I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure: Christmas couldn't go on the same way again. Not under my roof. And I want you to really think about this. How many of us women have stood alone in our kitchens after everyone's gone, asking ourselves why we keep doing it? If you've been there, you understand. Too many of us carry that same burden in silence. As the days inched closer to December, I kept telling myself maybe this year would be different. Maybe I'd skip hosting altogether. Maybe I'd just go to the church potluck instead, sit at a table with friends and neighbors, no shouting, no tension. The thought of it felt lighter, easier. But habits are hard to break. 4 years, my home had been the Christmas house. The kids expected it, Melissa expected it, even David expected it, though he never showed much gratitude. That history weighed heavy on my shoulders. I pictured my grandkids waking up on Christmas morning without the smell of ham in the oven or the stockings hung by my fireplace, and guilt crept in. So one afternoon, I sat down at the kitchen table with a stack of envelopes. I wrote out the invitations like I always did. Melissa's was easy. She always came with a smile, a casserole, and helping hands. But when I got to David and Kara's names, my hand shook. It felt like I was signing up for another round of heartache. Still, I slipped on the stamp and dropped them all in the mailbox. The moment that lid clanged shut, regret washed over me. I knew what was coming. I knew I'd done it again. I stood in the driveway, the cold air biting at my cheeks, and thought, why do I keep inviting trouble into my own home? But by then, the envelopes were gone. There was no turning back. A week later, I drove out to the edge of town to pick out a Christmas tree. The smaller trees were cheaper, but I still ended up choosing one a little taller, just the way Robert always liked. I tied it to the roof of my car myself, wrestled it through the front door, and by the time I got it into the stand, my back was aching and my hands were sticky with sap. I dropped onto the couch, staring at the bare branches, wondering if it was worth all that trouble. But I couldn't bring myself to leave it undecorated. So, I opened the old boxes from the closet. The same ornaments we'd used for decades stared back at me. Faded bulbs, crocheted angels, and a wrinkled paper snowflake Melissa made back in 2nd grade. I hung each one carefully, even though part of me kept thinking I might be decorating for another argument instead of a celebration. When I reached the last box, I found the nativity set Robert had carved by hand. He made each little figure out of wood that first winter after our oldest was born. I still remember the sound of his knife working late at night, the smell of the shavings, and the quiet pride in his eyes when he set them on the mantel. 4 years, that set was the centerpiece of our Christmas. I placed Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus on the mantel first, then added the shepherds, the wise men, and the little donkey with one uneven leg. When I stepped back to look at it, I didn't feel peace like I used to. I felt tension rising in my chest. That set had always meant love and calm, but now it only reminded me of everything I'd lost. Robert was gone. The peace was gone. And all I could feel was dread, waiting for David and Kara to walk through my door. A few days later, Melissa called to confirm. "We'll be there early, Mom," she said. "I'll bring the sweet potatoes." Her steady voice comforted me. I knew she'd be there no matter what. Then my phone buzzed again. It was David. His text was short, like always. "We'll come. Kara wants turkey instead of ham. Can you do that?" I stared at the screen, jaw tight. I'd already bought the ham. I thought about replying no, but instead, I just set the phone down and didn't answer. I knew exactly what that message meant. They were coming, and they'd bring their arguments with them. That night, I sat in the soft glow of the tree lights, thinking about all the years gone by. Christmas used to be my favorite time. Robert and I would play old records, drink cocoa, and laugh while the kids tore into their presents. The house was full of warmth then. Now, it was full of tension I couldn't shake. Still, I clung to the tradition. I wrapped the gifts I'd managed to buy on my tight budget, hung the stockings with each grandchild's name, and baked cookies to tuck into tins. I did everything I could to make it feel like Christmas, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. But late at night, when the lights went out and the house fell silent, a knot sat deep in my stomach. I knew that once David and Kara walked through that door, the peace would vanish. No amount of ornaments or cookies could hide it. And yet, I pressed forward, because some part of me still wasn't ready to let go. As Christmas crept closer, that knot only grew tighter. The tree stood shining in the corner, the nativity set on the mantel, the gifts neatly wrapped beneath the branches. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, I was bracing myself. It didn't take long for Kara to start up again, about a week before Christmas. My phone buzzed with one of her long messages. She didn't even say hello. The kids don't like ham. Can you make turkey this year? Also, can you do more sides? Maybe macaroni and cheese. And don't forget, they like those brand name rolls, not the store brand. And please, no cranberry sauce. Nobody eats it. I just stared at the screen. My chest tightened. I'd already bought the ham. I'd picked up the rolls that were on sale. I'd spent hours planning everything around what I could afford. Now she wanted me to toss it all aside like it meant nothing. I set the phone down and didn't answer right away. Later that night, I finally texted back, "I already have the ham. That's what I'll be making." Her reply came fast. "Fine. But don't expect the kids to eat it." I sat there in the quiet, holding my phone, wondering why my son married a woman who treated me like hired help instead of his mother. But then I reminded myself, David never stops her. He never has. 2 days later, he called. He didn't ask how I was doing or how the preparations were going. He just jumped straight into gifts. "Mom," he said, "can you get the kids those new gaming systems? They're on sale now." It'd mean a lot. I felt my throat tighten. "David," I said gently, "I can't afford that. Those systems cost hundreds of dollars. I live on my Social Security check. I don't have that kind of money." He sighed into the phone, like I was somehow letting him down. "Come on, Mom. It's Christmas. You only live once. The kids would be thrilled." I rubbed my forehead, feeling a headache coming on. "I've already bought gifts," I told him. "Books, puzzles, warm sweaters, things they can actually use. I did my best with what I have." His voice sharpened. "You always do this. You act like Melissa's kids are easier to buy for, but you never think about mine. Do you want them to feel left out?" I sat there gripping the phone, my heart pounding. There it was again, his way of twisting things, making me feel guilty for what I didn't have to give. I thought about what my doctor told me last month at my checkup. "Carolyn, your blood pressure's too high," he'd said. "You need to find ways to reduce stress. If you keep pushing yourself, you're putting your health at risk." His words echoed in my head as David kept talking, listing off gadgets and prices like he was reading from a catalog. Finally, I cut him off. "David," I said, steady but firm, "I've done what I can. That's all there is." He went quiet for a second, then muttered, "Fine. Do whatever you want," and hung up. I sat there staring at the phone, my hands trembling. 4 years, I've stretched my budget to help those kids, buying shoes, coats, school supplies, skipping things for myself so they'd have what they needed. And somehow, it was never enough. That evening, my neighbor Evelyn stopped by. She found me sitting on the porch, looking worn down. She handed me a plate of cookies and sat beside me. "You look tired, Carolyn," she said softly. "What's going on?" I told her everything. Kara's texts, David's demands, and how every year I felt more like a servant than a mother. I told her about my doctor's warning and how the stress was starting to eat away at me. She listened quietly, nodding, and then she laid her hand over mine. "You don't have to keep sacrificing your peace for tradition," she said gently. "You raised your children. You've done your part. If they want to fight, let them fight somewhere else. You don't have to open your door to that anymore." Her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. Part of me wanted to argue, to say, "But it's Christmas, I have to host, it's what we've always done." But another part of me, quieter and deeper, knew she was right. That night, after Evelyn went home, I sat in my living room with only the glow of the Christmas tree for light. I studied the ornaments, each one tied to a memory. Melissa's paper snowflake, David's lumpy clay reindeer with the crooked antlers, and the little glass angel Robert bought me the year we couldn't afford anything else. All those memories pressed into the quiet. And for the first time, I let myself imagine it. What if I didn't host at all? What if Christmas came and I didn't open my door to the shouting, the demands, the guilt? What if I spent the day at the church potluck instead, surrounded by laughter and hymns, not clenched jaws and slammed doors? The thought scared me. It felt like giving up on my family, but it also felt like taking a full breath for the first time in years. I leaned back in my chair, heart thudding, and whispered, "Something has to change." After Evelyn left, her words wouldn't let go. "You don't have to keep sacrificing your peace for tradition." I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old clock tick, replaying her advice again and again. For years I've been the one trying to hold the family together. Maybe, just maybe, I don't have to anymore. The next morning, I made a fresh pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. At the top I wrote, "What are my choices?" Then I started a list. Option 1. Let Melissa host Christmas. She has more space, and she's always willing to help. But I knew how that would end. David and Kara would show up, bring the tension with them, and ruin Melissa's day the same way they've ruined mine. I didn't want to shift the burden onto her. Option 2. Skip hosting completely and go to the church potluck. Every year the church opens its doors, and folks without nearby family, or anyone who just wants company, gather with folding tables, paper plates, and a parade of casseroles. After Robert passed, I went once. It was simple, but there was singing, laughter, and peace. Lately, that sounds more like Christmas than what I've been living. Option 3. Do nothing at all. No tree, no meal, no gathering, just a quiet day at home with something simple for dinner. The thought stung. I can't remember a Christmas without family around. But the quiet held its own kind of pull. I put the pen down and stared at the list. None of it was perfect, but it was real. For the first time, I realized I had a choice. Later that day, David called. His voice was casual, like our last conversation hadn't happened. "Hey Mom," he said, "I've been thinking, maybe you could get the kids new phones instead. They're cheaper than the gaming systems, and Kara says they really need them." I tightened my grip on the phone and took a slow breath. "David," I said, steady and slow, "I can't. I've already told you. I don't have that kind of money. I bought gifts I can afford. Books, puzzles, clothes. That's what they're getting." He chuckled under his breath. "Mom, come on. You've always figured things out. You spoil Melissa's kids. Why can't you do the same for mine? Don't you want them to feel included?" That word, included, hit like a slap. I've covered so much for so long. I bought shoes when theirs wore out, filled their fridge when the cupboards were bare, took the grandkids for school supplies when Kara said she didn't have time. I gave until my wallet was empty. And somehow it was never enough. "David," I said firmly, "I can't and I won't. Please don't ask me again." Silence stretched. Then he sighed, irritation heavy. "Fine. Do whatever you want. Just don't be surprised when the kids are disappointed." And he hung up. I sat staring at the phone, my heart pounding. The old guilt tried to creep back in. Was I letting my grandkids down? Then another thought rose, louder this time. I raised David, but I won't raise his temper too. The sentence stuck like glue. I'd done my job. I raised my son to adulthood. His choices, his attitude, his behavior, they belong to him now, not me. That evening, I called Melissa. I told her what happened, the gifts, the way David dismissed me. She was quiet for a beat, then said, "Mom, you don't have to keep bending over backward. You've done more than enough. If it comes to it, we'll do Christmas here. I'll make the ham. You just come and enjoy." Her words brought tears to my eyes. Melissa has always been the steady one, not asking me to give more, but offering me rest. After we hung up, I sat by the window, the tree lights reflected in the glass. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped. I had options. I could say no. I could step back. I didn't know yet which path I'd take, but I felt something shifting. The weight I've carried all these years wasn't mine to hold anymore. I'd kept quiet, thinking it was my duty to keep the peace, but peace never came. I whispered into the room, almost like I was talking to Robert, "This year, something has to change." And for the first time, I meant it. Christmas Eve came, and from the moment I woke, tension pressed on my chest. The house looked beautiful, the tree glowing in the corner, the table set with my best dishes, the ham resting in the oven. Melissa arrived early, like always. She mashed the potatoes, poured drinks, and her calm presence steadied me. Still, deep down, I braced for the storm. By 6 o'clock, David and Kara still weren't there. The rolls had gone cold, and Melissa's kids were fidgeting, asking when dinner would start. I kept my voice cheerful, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock. At 6:30, the front door swung open. They came in mid-argument, Kara's voice sharp about traffic, David snapping that she was the reason they were late. Their coats weren't even off before the fight spilled into my living room. The grandkids trailed in behind them, eyes down, embarrassed. Melissa shot me a look, lips pressed thin. We both knew what was coming. We sat anyway. I started to say grace, but halfway through Kara sighed, loud, and muttered, "This again." My hand hovered over the serving spoon. She didn't stop there. "I told you the kids don't like ham. And what is this?" She pointed at the green beans. "Nobody eats that. Couldn't you make something normal?" Heat climbed up my neck, but I kept my voice even. "Kara, this is what I prepared. You're welcome to eat what you like." David leaned back, arms crossed. "See? This is what I mean. You never listen. You've done things your way for years, Mom. You always side with Melissa. You never care what we want." Melissa set her fork down slowly and shook her head. "David, that's not fair." But he wasn't listening. His voice rose, anger spilling over. "Every year it's the same. You act like we should be grateful for scraps. You don't care about my kids the way you care about hers." The room went still. The grandkids froze, their eyes wide. I looked at David, my son, the boy I raised, and for a moment I didn't even recognize him. My hands trembled on the edge of the table. Then, something inside me snapped. I slammed my hand down so hard the silverware rattled. "Enough." My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Get out of my house, both of you. Right now." For a moment, the only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator. Kara's mouth dropped open. David's face turned red. Across the table, Melissa just stared at me, eyes wide. David shoved back his chair. "Fine. If that's how you feel, we're leaving. Come on, Kara." They grabbed their coats and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the wreath shook. The sound echoed through the house long after they were gone. I sat down slowly, my hands still flat on the table. Melissa looked at me, shocked. The kids stared at their plates in silence. I should have felt relief, like I'd finally stood up for myself, but all I felt was emptiness. I looked around at the table, the untouched ham, the cold rolls. The pies still lined neatly on the counter. The tree glowed softly in the corner, ornaments shimmering, but it all looked hollow, like a stage set for a play no one wanted to watch. My eyes drifted to the mantel, to the nativity Robert had carved so many years ago. The wooden figures stood there quietly, reminders of the peace this season was supposed to bring. But all I could feel was the weight of years of fights, slammed doors, and broken traditions. I took a slow breath. "Christmas is cancelled," I said quietly but firmly. "I'm done with this house." Melissa blinked, unsure if she heard right. "Mom, what do you mean?" I met her eyes. "I can't do this anymore. This house isn't a home, it's just a place for their arguments. I won't spend another holiday like this. I'm selling it." The room went silent. Melissa's mouth opened, then closed. The kids looked confused, but inside, I felt calm, clearer than I had in years. That night, after everyone went home, I sat at my computer. My hands didn't shake as I typed, "real estate agents near me." I clicked the first name that came up and filled out the form to request a call. When I hit submit, a wave of relief washed over me. Before bed, I walked into the living room one last time. The tree lights glowed softly, the presents still piled underneath. I should have felt sad, but I didn't. I looked at the nativity, at that little wooden donkey with its uneven legs, and whispered, "Robert, I think it's time." For the first time in years, I didn't dread what came next. I felt ready to let go of the house, ready to let go of the chaos, ready to start fresh. Christmas was over. But something new had begun. Some of you might say I went too far. Others might think I didn't go far enough. But let me ask you honestly, would you have sold the house? Hit like if you would have done the same, or comment if you think I overreacted. Either way, don't just scroll past this, be part of the conversation. The morning after Christmas, I woke early. The house was silent, but not the comforting kind. The leftovers still sat in the fridge. The gifts were untouched beneath the tree. The dining table looked frozen in time, plates still out from the night before. I made a cup of coffee and sat down. When I finally looked at my phone, there were 6 messages from David, one after another. You embarrassed us in front of the kids. You've always taken Melissa's side. You ruined Christmas. Don't expect us next year. And the last one, you'll regret this. I set the phone down. I didn't reply. I'd spent years answering, defending, explaining, but not anymore. Later, when I opened Facebook, Kara's posts were already there for everyone to see. Some people care more about appearances than family, she'd written. Sad when a grandmother can't make room for her own son and grandkids at Christmas. The comments poured in, friends of hers calling me selfish, saying she deserved better. My stomach twisted, but I closed the app and put the phone aside. I wasn't going to live my life through her drama anymore. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. A young real estate agent stood on my porch, smiling with a clipboard in her hand. Mrs. Blake? You requested a visit last night. Yes, I said with a nod. Come on in. She walked through the house, asking about square footage, roof repairs, the furnace. I answered calmly, showing her every room, every corner I'd scrubbed and painted and loved over the years. It felt strange, leading a stranger through spaces that once meant everything. When we stepped outside, she tucked her pen into her folder. I'll prepare the paperwork this week. In the meantime, we'll put the sign up. And just like that, she slid a bright red and white for sale sign into my yard. I stood on the porch watching it sink into the ground. For a moment, I thought my knees might give out, but instead of sadness, I felt relief. Like a weight had finally slipped from my shoulders. That afternoon, Melissa pulled into the driveway. The moment she saw the sign, she stopped in her tracks. Mom, she said slowly, what is this? I folded my arms, bracing myself. It's what I decided. I'm selling the house. She hurried up the walk, disbelief on her face. Mom, you can't sell the family home because of one fight. I met her eyes, steady and sure. It wasn't one fight, Melissa. It was the last fight. Every year, it's the same. This house isn't a home anymore, it's a stage for their drama. Your father and I built it for peace, and that peace is gone. She started to speak, then stopped. Finally, she sighed and rubbed her forehead. I just don't want you to make a decision you'll regret. I won't regret it, I said firmly. I've lived here long enough to know when it's time, and it's time. We went inside, and I pulled out the stack of cardboard boxes I'd picked up from the grocery store. Melissa watched quietly as I opened the first one and began packing books from the shelves. My hands were steady. I wasn't shaking. Mom, she said softly, are you really sure? I placed the books neatly in the box and taped it shut. Yes. I don't feel guilty. I feel free. All afternoon, I packed photo albums, framed pictures, folded quilts, Robert's old tools from the garage. Each item I wrapped and set aside felt like closing a chapter. There were flashes of memory, birthdays, laughter, Christmas mornings when the house was full of joy. But even those moments had been buried under years of tension. I took down the stockings, folded the tablecloth, and gently wrapped the nativity figures Robert had carved. As I placed them in a box, I whispered to myself, this goes with me. The peace comes with me. When Melissa left that evening, she hugged me tightly. If this is what you want, Mom, she said, then I'll support you. And for the first time in a very long time, I believed her. After Melissa drove away, I sat on the couch, the Christmas tree still glowing in the corner. I thought I should have felt heartache, but instead, I felt calm. A kind of quiet peace I hadn't known in years. The house wasn't mine to carry anymore. It was just walls and a roof. The real home was wherever I chose to make it. And for the first time, I was choosing peace. A few weeks passed after the for sale sign went up. Winter settled deep into Cedar Grove, the snow lining the streets like a heavy blanket. From the outside, the house looked the same, but to me, it already felt different. Every box I filled reminded me that I was one step closer to being free from the weight I'd carried for far too long. I'd gotten used to the quiet. My phone buzzed now and then with messages from Melissa, but there was nothing from David, not a word. I figured he was still angry. Honestly, I was fine with the silence. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe I could move forward and let him live his life while I lived mine. Then, one cold Tuesday afternoon, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer when I saw David's name on the screen. My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. But something inside me whispered, "Pick it up." "Mom." His voice cracked through the line. He sounded panicked, not angry. "It's Kara, she's in the hospital. She collapsed at work. They think it might be her heart." I froze, gripping the phone tighter. "What happened?" "They're running tests. She has to stay for a few days, maybe longer. I don't know what to do. The kids, Mom, I can't handle this by myself. Can you help?" For a moment, I didn't say a word. The old me would have jumped in without a second thought, dropping everything to rescue him. But the new me, the woman who had finally drawn her line in the sand, took a slow, steady breath before answering. "I'll help with the kids," I said carefully, "but only on my terms. I'm not moving back in, David. I'll come after school, make sure they're fed, keep things steady, but I go home to my own bed at night. You understand?" He was quiet, then finally said, "Fine. I can't do this without you." That night, I drove to their house for the first time since Christmas. The kids came running to the door. Sophie, the oldest, had dark circles under her eyes. Dylan's hair stuck up like it hadn't seen a brush in days. Caleb and little Elsie wrapped their arms around me like they'd been waiting for me to appear. The house was a mess, dishes piled high, laundry scattered across the floor, backpacks dumped by the door. David paced the living room, looking lost. "I don't know what to do, Mom," he admitted. "I work all day, and Kara, she usually handles this stuff." I took a deep breath. "We'll get through it. But listen carefully, I'm not doing everything for you. The kids are old enough to help. And you're their father. You have to step up too." That evening, I made a simple dinner, pasta and green beans. While it cooked, I gathered the kids around the table. "Here's how this is going to work," I said. "Sophie, you're in charge of homework. Dylan, you'll take care of trash and laundry. Caleb, you set the table. Elsie, you pick up toys. Everyone has a job." At first, they looked unsure. But when we started, something shifted. Sophie checked her brother's assignments like a little teacher. Dylan grumbled but folded laundry. Caleb lined up the forks and napkins, proud of himself. Even little Elsie hummed as she picked up crayons and put them back in their box. When the pasta was ready, I served it and sat with them. They ate quietly at first, then began to talk, about school, their friends, and about Kara in the hospital. I listened, nodding, letting them feel heard. After dinner, I showed Dylan how to load the dishwasher. "Not too much soap," I said, handing him the bottle. He gave me a small, proud smile when he got it right. By 9 o'clock, I grabbed my purse. David looked at me, tired. "You're leaving?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I told you, I'm not moving back in. I'll be here after school tomorrow, but tonight, I sleep in my own bed." He nodded reluctantly. I kissed the kids good night and drove home. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel drained. I felt balanced. The next few days fell into rhythm. I arrived after school, helped with dinner, guided the kids through chores, then went home at night. Each day, they grew more confident. Sophie made scrambled eggs one evening all by herself. Dylan started doing laundry without being asked. Caleb learned how to sweep the kitchen floor, humming as he worked. And Elsie set the table with little folded napkins shaped like triangles. They weren't perfect, the eggs burned sometimes, socks got mixed up, but they were learning. They weren't just depending on me anymore. They were learning to depend on themselves. Even David started to change. One evening I caught him helping Dylan fold towels. Another night, he read Elsie a bedtime story. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. At the end of the week, I sat in my car outside my house, hands on the steering wheel, and thought about everything that had happened. I wasn't the rescuer anymore. I wasn't the maid, the cook, the one holding the family together. I was a mentor, guiding them, showing them what they were capable of. I whispered into the quiet car, "This is how it should have been all along." Days turned into weeks, and helping at David's house became routine. But it wasn't like before. I wasn't living there. I wasn't sacrificing myself. I'd drawn my line, and I was keeping it. Every afternoon after school, I drove over, made sure the kids were fed, kept things running. By 9 o'clock, I grabbed my purse and went home. That boundary never shifted, not once. Before, I used to do everything: cooking, cleaning, washing, tucking the kids in, while David and Kara drifted in and out. But now it was different. I didn't do for them what they could do themselves. I started teaching. Sophie, being the oldest, was ready to learn more than anyone had given her credit for. One evening, I showed her how to roast a chicken. She peeled carrots, washed potatoes, and learned how to season everything just right. When she carried the platter to the table, her back was straight, her eyes shining. Later, she whispered, "Grandma, I didn't know I could do that." I smiled. "You can do a lot more than you think." Dylan took over laundry duty. At first, he threw everything into one load: whites, colors, towels, and when we pulled it out later, half the clothes were pink. He looked horrified, but I just laughed softly. "That's how we learn. Next time, you'll sort them." Sure enough, the next week, he proudly showed me neat stacks of folded shirts. Caleb became the table setter and sweeper. It didn't sound like much, but he took it seriously, lining up forks evenly, folding napkins into triangles, sweeping under the table after dinner. One night he puffed his chest and told his brother, "Grandma says this is my job, so you can't take it." I let Caleb have that small victory. And Elsie, my youngest grandchild, became the toy organizer. She learned to tuck her crayons back in the boxes, line her dolls on the shelf, and set her shoes by the door. She liked having something that was hers to control, and I made sure to praise her for it. The more responsibility they took, the more I watched them grow. They weren't helpless. They weren't fragile. They just needed someone to expect more of them. David and Kara had never asked much, either doing everything themselves or leaving it all to me. But children rise when you believe they can. Meanwhile, I started getting my own life back. On Thursdays, I rejoined the quilting circle at church. The first night I walked in with my fabric bag, the women clapped and said, "Welcome back, Carolyn." I hadn't realized how much I missed it: the chatter, the laughter, the steady rhythm of stitching. For once, I wasn't rushing home to fix someone else's dinner. On Saturday mornings, I joined the walking club at the park. At first, my legs ached after one lap, but Evelyn nudged me on. "Keep going," she said. "You'll get stronger." And I did. The air felt fresh, the conversation light, and I could feel my body waking up after years of ending the day bone-tired from babysitting. I even found time to volunteer at the senior center as a desk aide. It wasn't a big job, answering phones, greeting visitors, but it gave me purpose. I met people, heard their stories, and felt useful in a way that didn't drain me. Because I had balance, I didn't feel resentful. Cooking with Sophie felt joyful. Showing Dylan how to fold towels felt patient. Sweeping the kitchen with Caleb and organizing toys with Elsie felt like love, not duty. David, for his part, grew quieter. Sometimes he watched me teach the kids, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or realization. He didn't say much, but he started doing more. One evening I walked in and found him helping Sophie with homework. Another night, he already had a load of laundry going. Not perfect, but something. As I was leaving one evening, Sophie walked me to the door. "Grandma," she said softly, "thank you for teaching us. I feel like we're a team now." I hugged her, my throat tight, and whispered, "That's all I wanted, sweetheart." Driving home, I thought about it all. For years, I believed love meant giving until there was nothing left of me. I thought being a good mother and grandmother meant absorbing every burden. But with the quiet hum of the road around me, I realized something else. "I'm showing them love without surrendering myself," I said out loud. And it was true. The balance was new. Not easy, but right. I wasn't their rescuer anymore. I was their guide. And in guiding them, I found my strength again. Spring came, and with it the final papers for the sale. I stood on the porch one last time, looking over the yard Robert and I had tended together. The grass was just turning green, and the old maple out front was budding. For a moment, my chest tightened. This had been my home for decades, the place where my children grew up, where Robert and I shared our lives. Then I remembered Christmas Eve, the shouting, the slammed door, the tension that had settled over every holiday for years. That memory made it easier to turn the key, lock the door, and hand it to the new owners. I moved into a smaller place on the other side of town, a cozy 2-bedroom apartment, easy to manage. No creaky stairs, no big yard, no dining table large enough to host fights. Just enough space for me, and room for the grandkids to visit. At first, the evenings felt strange, the quiet almost too much. But I grew to love it. I decorated exactly how I wanted, quilts on the walls, a few framed photos of Robert on the shelf. I planted geraniums in pots on the balcony. The space felt truly mine, not a stage for anyone else's drama. The next Christmas was the real test. Melissa called early in December. "Mom, what do you want to do this year?" "Something small," I said, smiling into the phone. "Something peaceful." And that's what we did. Melissa and her family came. Evelyn brought her cranberry salad, like always. I made a smaller meal, roast chicken instead of a crowd-sized ham. We set the table with simple dishes, and the grandkids helped light candles. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it was peaceful. We ate, laughed, played a board game, and ended the night singing carols softly while Evelyn tapped along. It was the kind of Christmas I hadn't had in years. David and Kara weren't there. I told them clearly, they were welcome only if they respected the boundaries. No shouting, no demands, no turning my home into a battlefield. They didn't come, and I didn't chase them. That was their choice. I no longer felt guilty about it. After dinner, Sophie helped me wash dishes, and Dylan showed me the book he was reading for school. Caleb and Elsie curled up on the couch with Evelyn, giggling as she told them a story from her childhood. I sat back and took it in. My living room was full of laughter, not tension, warmth, not anger. It hit me then that I'd done the right thing. Selling the house hadn't been giving up. It had been letting go of years of pain and reclaiming my peace. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments.